Hello all! Welcome to the application of solution-focused brief therapy for the film Captain Fantastic. My name is Crystal Armand, and this presentation is being made for the Psychology Department, Mrs. Alyssa Green, Professor of Psychology 455, Family Systems and Dynamics, Summer 1 term for June 18th, 2023. On the agenda for this presentation is a discussion on the therapeutic proposal, followed by a history regarding the modality along with the theory's premises. Then we will meet the family from the film Captain Fantastic and consider how to apply solution-focused brief therapy to the family's primary issue. Steve DeShazer once said, "Where you stand determines what you see and what you do not see. It determines also from the angle you see it from. A change in where you stand changes everything." The therapeutic proposal for this film's family is solution-focused brief therapy. Solution-focused brief therapy is also known as solution-oriented family therapy. An emphasis is placed to fully understand the family, and so an encompassing overview of the family's social life and social standards, their personal history as a unit and individually, as well as their culture and how it interplays with their communication styles and dynamics are assessed and thusly integrated into the therapy to better assist the family. While other modalities spend plenty of time dissecting a problem, solution-focused brief therapy leans towards the belief that dysfunction within families are a result of getting stuck looking at the issue when dealing with problems. Of course, when in therapy, we want to identify a problem. However, in solution-focused brief therapy, we want to break out of the repetitive pattern of focusing on the issue and encourage the families to reevaluate any set views, meaning ideas that may be integral to the family's belief or even outdated, archaic views that no longer serve the family, and instead elicit the family's creativity to find new ways of being, thinking, or even whole new patterns depending upon the problem. This novel approach that focuses on finding a solution can effectively break those repetitive and non-productive behavioral patterns. In fact, there are 3 basic rules. First, if it is not broken, do not fix it. Second, once you know what works, do more of it. And finally, if something does not work, do not do it again. A great quote from one of the pioneers of solution-focused brief therapy that encapsulates the therapeutic model perfectly is Steve DeShazer's, "Problem talk creates problems. Solution talk creates solutions." Some important notes to consider regarding solution-focused brief therapy is that the focus during therapy is on the solutions for problems occurring in the present tense. Historical problems are not reopened, as it is seen as unhelpful to the family and even harmful in some instances. The goal is to help the family find solutions to move forward with that are sustainable. It is also important to note that families are not viewed as hesitant or resistant to therapy and are instead viewed as intrinsically motivated to change and move forward with the solutions that are found in therapy. These solutions do not have to be major overhauls of established dynamics or routines, and can instead be small changes that make a great impact in the overall well-being of the family. To assist in eliciting these changes and encourage motivation, solution-focused brief therapy is brief and typically occurs within 5 to 10 sessions. So what are some limitations to this therapy? Well, it may come in the motivation that the individuals who are coming to therapy for have. So in solution-focused brief therapy, we have 3 different people who come into the office, 3 different clients. The first are visitors. Maybe they're a part of the problem. Maybe they're an integral part of the problem, but they're unmotivated to change and they're uninterested in solutions. In fact, sometimes they might not even see themselves as the problem. What the therapist can do in those instances is just to be respectful, establish rapport, and then hope that this individual can eventually become a customer. The second type of client would be a complainant. And just as the name implies, they complain. They come here mostly to get things off their chest, complain about the problems. However, these individuals can be observant of the problems And maybe they even see what impact they have in the problem, but they may just be uninterested in finding solutions at that moment in time. The therapist can then be respectful to this individual, still establish rapport, but assign activities to find exceptions to those complaints, which could then hopefully scoot them a little closer to becoming a customer. Customers are clients that can describe the problem, see how they contribute to the problem, and are willing and motivated to find those solutions and integrate the changes discovered in therapy. In these instances, the therapist can engage in solution-oriented conversations, establish intervention strategies, and they are able to provide all of the benefits of solution-focused brief therapy. Now let's get into the emotional neglect myth. Kim and Franklin, 2015, completed a literature review in response to criticism from peers within the field of psychology, which stated that solution-focused brief therapy's focus on identifying simple solutions to complex problems may be neglecting the emotional process for clients. After all, the clients are coming to work through problems, and there's a lot of heavy emotions that can be tied to those problems, right? Well, what Kim and Franklin found was that since the inception of solution-focused brief therapy, developing positive emotions to enact the solutions have always been an integral component of the therapy. Kim and Franklin even discussed how solution-focused brief therapy has many similarities and is tied to positive psychology in some ways. Through the use of reframing situations and solution-focused conversations, positive emotions are elicited, and difficult emotions, which are typically displayed earlier in sessions, are dealt with appropriately at that time when being discussed. There is simply just not an emphasis on prolonging the time that the problem is dissected, and rather the emphasis is placed on discovering the solutions. The history and premises and practices of solution-focused brief therapy. Solution-focused brief therapy is a postmodern theory that evolved from strategic therapy that wanted to move away from focusing on what is wrong to focusing on how to ameliorate situations through the acquisition of new skills, focusing on strengths, and providing resources to the families. In fact, even in the way that we present problems or the way that we speak to clients is shifted. For example, instead of causes in the past that might relate to this experience, a solution-focused brief therapist might say, what is influencing? Instead of blame and control, we would look at progress. Instead of asking what is wrong, we would ask what's wanted, and then move towards that. Three pioneers in this field that were and are integral to solution-focused brief therapy's views is Steve DeShazer, Insoo Kim Berg, and Bill O'Hanlon. Each saw the role of the therapist as assisters to their clients, who are intelligent enough to solve their own problems, but may need a bit of assistance regarding with the treatment techniques that solution-focused brief therapy has. DeShazer introduced brief therapy, where in shorter periods of time, therapy focused on solutions and not problems can really assist clients. He also had a team to assist in providing therapy that were considered consultants. That way, multiple perspectives could assist the client and family. Insoo Kim Berg developed the miracle question, which asks the family if a miracle were to happen and the problem were solved, then what would the family do? She also authored many books to pass on the knowledge and expertise that she had within the field. Bill O'Hanlon is still alive and impacting many even today through podcasts, YouTube interviews, and books that he authored as well. He considers himself to be the founder of solution-oriented therapy, which he calls possibility therapy now. His approach when practicing was pragmatic and hopeful with an Ericksonian perspective. Fun fact, he was even Erickson's gardener at one point. A quote from Bill O'Hanlon is, "If you can change something from a tragedy to a mission, to a contribution, it can often transform the energy which was just going around inside of you or keeping you from the world into something that moves you out into the world and gives you purpose and direction. Let's take a look within solution-focused brief therapy's treatment techniques. Initially, the therapist and family need to co-create a problem, meaning after gaining insight of the family, does the therapist agree that the problem is what is being presented? For example, is the issue reactivity or is it really division of labor? Then the miracle question is asked. So, if a miracle were to happen and the problem were solved, then what would the family do? This gives the family a chance to suspend the issue and create a vision of what they truly want for their future. This vision can then have actionable steps taken towards it to bring it to fruition. Exceptions to the problem are then asked. So, for example, if conflict is the problem, then when is there peace? Peace would be the exception. Scaling is also utilized to gauge progress. On a scale of 1 to 10, how close are you to your goal? And depending upon the answer, it can be asked how to get closer to the next number up or to 10. Second order change is those actionable steps taken towards solving the problem. It can be centered around a recurring event that is sparking the problem, or it can even be an entire restructuring of the family dynamics. An example could be if homework completion does not occur before bed, but video games are being played instead, then first homework can be completed and then gaming can follow. Reframing an issue to find what positive yearning or motivation may lie underneath also assists during that second order change. When we reframe an issue, we can gain perspective in a different way. Compliments are also used by the therapist to write out strengths that the family has. It also builds up a yes set, which is an open willingness to act out the changes that are suggested. Gladding 2020 states that clues are interventions that mirror the usual behavior of the family. It's a way of approaching a problem and pointing to long-term effects of that problem if it's not changed, but in a digestible way. Then there are skeleton keys. I want us to take a closer look at skeleton keys, because just as this type of key was made to open any door within a home, solution-focused brief therapy utilizes metaphorical skeleton keys to unlock new perspectives for clients. Steve DeChazer developed 5 interventions that express what and how these skeleton keys work at getting the clients to uncover, or metaphorically unlock, the solutions that work for them and the family unit. The first intervention the therapist may say, however, these can be provided in no particular order. Between now and next time we meet, I want you to observe so that you can tell me next time what happens in your life, marriage, family, or relationship, whatever the object of focus is, that you want to continue to happen. This gets the family to focus on what they want to welcome more of into their lives. The second would be to request the family to do something different. This gets everyone to identify for themselves what they notice is not working and shift the behavior, tone, or even time at which they are completing the current problem. It can also push people to step out of their comfort zone or even mirror behaviors to each other, giving each other perspective. Another intervention is to request the client to pay attention to what you do when you overcome the temptation or urge to insert whatever may be the problem of focus. It is provoking individuals to gain perspectives of themselves and how they may be completely in control of their symptoms. A great intervention that helps families see that there are a multitude of options available is to say, a lot of people in your situation would have, and this statement can provide insight, hope, and options that were not yet perceivable. And because it's open-ended, you can utilize it in a plethora of circumstances with many different families. And finally, a wonderful and releasing exercise that can be given to assist in letting go of the past, moving forward, and even formulating one's thoughts is to write, read, and burn your thoughts. It is a grounding exercise that can provide a physical action to letting the past be the past and move forward in presence. A literary device becomes therapeutic. In 2019, Zatlukal et al. Presented how metaphors can be helpful therapeutic devices in solution-focused brief therapy. The therapist can use metaphors to open new doors within the self, family, or even possibilities. However, a way that can break ground for a client's progress may be when they use the literary device themselves. This opportunity can be seized in therapy in 4 steps. The first is to catch the client's metaphor, which arose organically in the process of therapy. The second step is to explore that metaphor's meaning to the individual and what weight it holds in comparison to the problem or the client's life. Then the metaphor can be used to explore new possibilities. And finally, we can anchor the metaphor to progress so it can be used to contribute to future successes and solutions. So an example of this could be, let's say the client says, I feel like I'm a boat in the middle of the sea. So we catch that metaphor and then we explore it. We can say, what do you mean when you say that you are a boat in the middle of the sea? And the client might say, I feel alone out here, but it's quite peaceful. I like the serenity of it. And then we can ask, well, what shore do you want to bring your boat to? And perhaps the client says, I want to bring it towards a shore of art. So that way I can paint new paintings and share it with the world. And so in therapy, you could say, well, let's find some actionable steps to get you towards this shore that you want to be a part of. And so maybe we'll give them homework to start exploring themselves, to start getting into the art modalities and putting themselves out there in the ways that they want to be seen. And then once we get there, we can anchor it, so to speak. So let's anchor that boat over to the shore of art after they have their art gallery that they finally planned that they were putting off. Now we can meet the family. Here is an introduction. In-Soo Kim Berg said, that's a way to see it, and there's also another way to see it. Let's get into the general plot of Captain Fantastic. A death in the family unearths many hidden or buried issues within the family system. Leslie, a mother of 6, commits suicide in a hospital that she was in for her bipolar disorder. Ben, her husband, attempts to tell his father-in-law his wife's will and final wishes. Ben is met with a threat to stay away or else a call to the police will occur. The children unite and demand to go to their mother's funeral. A road trip to New Mexico ensues with adventures along the way that provide insight to the dynamics of this unique family. Grief and solution-focused brief therapy. Gray et al. In the year 2000 completed a study that complements this family quite well. They went into rural communities to establish bereavement groups and assist these individuals through solution-focused brief therapy. The groups were established to foster social links with others experiencing grief to mitigate isolation and instead promote connection via a social support system that would not only provide permission to grieve so that they could attend to their intense feelings, but also to complete grief tasks like negotiating goals and possibilities, using future-oriented questions, scaling expectations, and coping. The emphasis given through solution-focused grief therapy was to cope with their grief and adapt to their new circumstances due to loss. They focused on everyone's strengths and provided spaces where everyone could process their experience, promote healing, growth, and reconcile the grief. This relates to the Cash family within Captain Fantastic because the nuclear family had settled in a remote rural location and created a support within the family system itself. But after the loss of the mother and wife, it becomes increasingly clear that social support is needed beyond just their family system. Let's take a look at the nuclear family in order of birth. First, we have Ben Cash, the father of the family who's in his 50s. He is a very philosophical individual who has ideals that he passed on to his children and believes in being more off-grid and fosters an environment for his children to become autonomous and independent. He encourages free thought and he tries to provoke his children into thinking for themselves and finding solutions. Him and his wife Leslie Abigail Cash moved all of their children into a plot of land in the forest that they bought in the Washington state, where they completely live off grid and they make their own food and they hunt their own food. He also teaches the children martial arts and yoga and meditation and has them reading at college levels even. Leslie Abigail Cash, the mother of this family, who is an unknown age, unfortunately commits suicide in the film, and it is due to her bipolar disorder. Bodevan Cash is the firstborn son, and he's 18 years old. He has just applied to every single Ivy League university and got in. However, his father is very anti-establishment, so he sits down and he talks to his father throughout the film, to which Ben welcomes his son and eventually accepts it. Kyler Cash and Vesper Cash are twin daughters, and both of their ages are unknown. They like to speak a language with one another, and they read books and are able to encapsulate what it means and provide presentations to the family. Relian Cash is the fourth son, and he is 12 years old. At this point, he blames his father for his mother's death, saying that Ben took all of the family out into the middle of nowhere and she wanted to go back home, when the reality is this was a dream that Ben and Leslie had created together, and they were very much united in the same way. But Relian grapples with this throughout the movie. It isn't until the end of the film that he understands that this was a unified effort from his father and mother, and that really he was just focusing the anger of his grief on his father. And his father welcomes him with loving arms and is never combative with his son when his son begins to grapple or poke and prod at his father. Instead, Ben meets him with questions. For example, Relian says, "You know that it happened and I did it." Very choppy in that way. And Ben says, "What do you mean?" And Relian says, "Well, you know what I mean." And Ben says, "I don't know what you mean." And Relian says, "Well, I know. And so that's what matters." This is just one example of one of these poking and proddings that Relian does throughout the film to kind of try and be combative with his father. But instead, his father meets him with a loving gaze and a simple openness to give him space to express himself. Then we have Zaja Cash, who is the fifth daughter and 8 years old. She's extremely intelligent and has an aptitude for U.S. politics, which is displayed in the film when she's with her cousins. Nye Cash is the sixth son and is the youngest of the family. The age is unknown, but you see all of these siblings come together with their little one. What is beautiful about this nuclear family is, besides Relian's kind of rebellion against his father, They're all very united and they are very team focused. You can see that there's genuinely love, but the entire family is grieving considering the circumstances of their mother. Now let's take a look at the extended family. First, we'll start with Jack Bertrand, who's married to Abigail, is the father of Leslie Abigail Cash and Harper Bertrand, and the grandfather of the Cash children. He has a very old generational view of how to present oneself and what one should do with their life. He definitely subscribes to society's standards and frequently is upset with the choices that his daughter and Ben made to live off-grid. Leslie was initially a lawyer and she left her law practice to begin this off-grid living adventure and cultivate a little oasis in the middle of the forest with her family. Jack was very disturbed by this and felt like Ben was taking Leslie away. He also seems to have a domineering type of expression to himself. He frequently takes charge and tells Abigail what to do, and was the individual who stated to Ben not to come to the funeral or he would have Ben arrested. He also has a lack of respect for his late daughter's will. So when it was asked for her to be cremated, he instead did a funeral of his faith instead of hers and had her buried, completely not listening to her wishes. Abigail Bertrand is married to Jack, is the mother of Leslie Abigail Cash and Harper Bertrand, and is the grandmother. You can see that she has a very nurturing spirit to her, and she's frequently trying to connect with the children, and she even connects with Ben. It becomes very clear that the issue is specifically Jack's want to control and Jack's domineeringness and Jack's ideals of what is right to do in society versus Ben, who is much more open-minded and wanted to go on this off-grid lifestyle. Harper Bertrand is married to Dave, is the mother of Justin and Jackson, is the sister to the late Leslie Abigail Cash, and the aunt to the Cash children. She's very mindful to respect Ben and Leslie's wishes. For example, when Ben and the children come over as a pit stop during the road trip, she ensures that they have all organic and non-GMO foods, something that she stresses to show that she was thinking of Ben and Leslie's way of living. Dave is very much an individual of just keep the peace and frequently scoots to the background. He's married to Harper Bertrand, he's the father of Justin and Jackson, and is the uncle to the Cash children. Then we have Justin, who's the firstborn son of Harper and Dave and is the cousin to the Cash children. And Jackson, who's the second-born son and cousin to the Cash children. Both Justin and Jackson have a very modern kid's life. They go to school and they play video games, something that's the antithesis of the Cash children who are homeschooled, have a rigorous physical training exercises, are in charge of what they eat and even reading material that they do. Let's look at key moments in the film. In the beginning, there's an introduction to the family that explores what a typical day looks like for the Cash children. Ben wakes them up with an instrument and they immediately go for a run. Throughout the day, they hunt, they tend to their garden for the produce that they eat, they are homeschooled, and it becomes very clear that they're at grade levels beyond their age. They train in martial arts, and they do a lot of recreational activities such as hiking and mountain climbing. At the end of the day, after they've had dinner where everyone cooked together, They sit and read with one another and discuss what their books were about. And then everyone gets an instrument and plays music with one another. Once the children learn about the death of their mother and the threat that Jack had made to Ben, they stand up, united with one another, as you can see in the pictures, demanding to their father, "It is important, and despite what he says, we need to see our mother one last time." And so they all pack up and get onto the bus, and a road trip occurs. They have to travel from Washington State all the way to New Mexico, where Jack and Abigail live. Along the way, the road trip has moments that expose that the children have a lack of socialization. Bodovan has trouble even saying hello to people and freezes up. The children say inappropriate things at inappropriate times. And then there's a moment where they stop with their aunt, uncle, and cousins, and you can clearly see the difference between the children. The cousins who have been socialized and they're living a typical modern childhood, and the Cash children who have been secluded away, and while they may have wonderful intelligence, they do lack social skills. When Harper tries to bring this up to Ben, Ben becomes quite antagonistic in the way that he speaks, and he continues to poke and prod at her, and even compares his 8-year-old Zaja's intelligence to their Jackson. At the end of it, Harper and Ben pull aside and realize that the way that they're communicating is ineffective, and they actually heal some of the problems that occurred when Leslie was still alive through a very heartfelt apology. However, then the climax of the funeral occurs, and Ben walks in a bright red suit, because that was the suit that he married Leslie in, and stands up in front of the church stating that this was not her religion and that her wishes were different from what was being done with her body at this time, that she wanted to be cremated and not buried. Jack becomes furious and pushes Ben and all of the children out of the church. It isn't until after the funeral is over that he meets with Ben outside and threatens him yet again. Abigail comes over and talks to the children, crying. She hugs them and holds them and expresses her love, and then apologizes to Ben for Jack's behavior. Relian senses that Jack holds more power, and so he runs away to Jack, saying that I'm going to live with you now, because I don't like my dad and the way that he does things. I think my mom wanted to leave. Jack, who does not like Ben for his anti-establishment and lack of following societal standards, takes Relian in, and then even threatens Ben with a bow and arrow. In order to mitigate this, Ben goes to the rest of the children and they try to break into the house and take Relian out. But Kyler falls off of the roof and ends up hurting herself. This is where Ben collapses, and he feels like he isn't a good father and that he can't do this alone without Leslie, and that maybe it is best for all of the children to live with Jack and Abigail, because Jack threatens to call a lawyer and take all of the children away. In Ben's grief, he is crushed. This is when Bodovan, Kyler, Vesper, Zaja, Relian, Nye all come together and say, "Dad, no, we love you and we're together and you are doing this." And it's a beautiful moment where everyone in the family comes together. And Relian realizes that it wasn't his father who took away his mother. It was his mother's sickness that took away his mother. And so they have Operation Save Mom, where the plot gets a little crazy and the entire family exhumes the grave, steals their mother's body, takes her back to Washington, puts flowers in her hair, and cremates her in the way that she had requested. Baudouin ends up deciding to travel abroad, and court-ordered, the family moves into an off-grid home that's a little more integrated into society, and the kids get to go to school so that way they can socialize with others and have that moment. Solution-focused brief therapy is a perfect modality for the Cash family because many resolutions were found within the film, but communication styles with the extended family members can continue to be remedied to ensure that all the Cash children can have a healthy relationship with their grandparents. In fact, during the film, when they meet the cousins again and spend time with their aunt and uncle, this process already begins. Ben and Harper come to an understanding that the way they handle conversations may not truly express what they sincerely feel. Now it's time to apply solution-focused brief therapy to the film. So initially, we have the death, and as we saw before, solution-focused brief therapy can assist the family in integrating the death of their mother and seeing how to presently honor her memory without holding on too tightly to the past, and start asking themselves future-oriented questions and cope with the loss. Then there's the combative speech with extended family and loose boundaries. Through co-creating a problem of communication with the therapist, the family can learn how to hold back on those antagonistic comments. The miracle question would go as follows. If a miracle happened tonight and you awoke tomorrow with a healthy and supportive relationship with your in-laws and grandparents, what would you do differently? It becomes very clear in the film that the issue is between the grandfather and the rest of the family. Everyone else is trying to build with one another. So, if a miracle happened and that was a healthy, supportive relationship, what would they do differently? Maybe they would incorporate them in fishing trips or go out together as a family to a park or an event. All are possibilities. Now we can move into exceptions. So when is the relationship with the extended family amicable? At what point does that mood shift? Within the film, we see that the children get along with their aunt, uncle, cousins, and grandmother, but it isn't until Jack, their grandfather, becomes a little upset about the way that they're living life that suddenly conflict starts to arise, and he generates a lot of feelings of anger and tries to control the situation by taking the kids away, who clearly do not want to be away from their father. So the point where it shifts most often is when Ben stands up to Jack, and oftentimes in an antagonistic way through communication. Then we can look at scaling. On a scale of 1 to 10, how far do you think you've come in solving the problem? How can we make it an 8, a 9, a 10? One number off from the number that they provided, or all the way up to a 10. Next, we'll move into second order change. So instead of the antagonistic behavior, play nicely with the in-laws and communicate in a way that is clear and harmonious. When reframing, instead of the view that Jack is out to attack you, perhaps he's also grieving in the way he knows how and is falling on his strengths. Perhaps this is how he's trying to honor his daughter's memory and grasp for a relationship with his grandchildren. Then we could compliment Ben and the children. I'm impressed with your flexibility and initiative to shift your children's environment and work together with your extended family for the betterment of your children. Again, although it was instigated through court-ordered changes, Ben did go out of his way to purchase a home while it was still off-grid and honoring him and Leslie's dream. It was within the realms of a school district, and he had the children going to school, which was a big point of contention for Jack. With clues, we could say, it seems like every time you step into your strengths and honor your beliefs while also honoring others' beliefs, that positive change follows. This can be seen when Ben put aside his antagonistic pokes and instead met with Harper and said, you know what, we can communicate in a better way. And he was honoring her beliefs while still honoring his. And then we can look at skeleton keys that could be pertainable to the Cash family. So from now until next time we meet, I'd like you to observe your family and interactions with Jack and Abigail so you can tell me what you want to continue. This can get Ben and the children looking for positives within that relationship instead of always focusing on the negatives. Another skeleton key would be pay attention to what you do after you overcome the urge to prod or poke Jack in a verbal spat. And then finally, this week, could you please write about your feelings towards Jack, read them over, and then burn them. This can give Ben a physical way to let it go. Solution-focused brief therapy and generational differences. While the entire Cash family can benefit from acquiring communication skills that are building focused instead of antagonistic, Captain Fantastic's primary contentions are between Jack Bertrand and Ben Cash, where there is a clear generational gap. Handley et al. 2018 found that the proposal to utilize solution-focused brief therapy in cases where communication is breaking down between generational cohorts is effective and beneficial. Each generational cohort places value in different modes of being, morals, and even how one should emulate themselves. For example, Jack believes that you should wear a suit and follow societal standards, where Ben Cash is pretty much on the opposite of that scale and is much more inclined to promote free thought in his children, where Jack would say, no, my say goes. Ben also is perfectly fine wearing slacks and a tank top and is very much against just following societal standards. These differences can sometimes lead to conflict, and we see this in Captain Fantastic. Solution-focused brief therapy is effective in bridging the generations that are in conflict because we can take actionable steps towards learning communication skills that can build the relationship and bridge them together. In summary, the Cash family had already found resolutions within their family unit within the film, but launching forward communication would be the problem of focus during sessions. By utilizing treatment techniques and solutions-focused brief therapy, Ben would be able to mend the maladaptive communication styles being displayed with his father-in-law so that his children can have a fruitful relationship with their extended family. Post-therapy, the Cash family have a promising future and ability to communicate effectively and amicably without antagonizing others. The following are the references for this presentation. Thank you so much for viewing my presentation. Have a beautiful day.